history test. You have the multiple choice section. You have the FRQ section, which is then made up of the short answers, the DBQs, and the LEQ. And it's the same. So if you put in the effort to study, say, AP World sophomore year, then you can apply those same skills to the APUSH and Euro exams. And it makes it really worthwhile to kind of double up or even triple up, depending on the student, because those skills really carry over, and it's really just a matter of studying the content uh, between each test.
Yeah, just want to point out AP history, AP World History, AP US History, AP Euro History all have the similar format.
Yeah, almost identical. The only thing that's different is the content.
And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box. So now let's talk about summer APUSH and AP World preview classes. So are you going to cover the Persia GT as well as the 3 types of essays?
Yes, we use the Persia GT not only to study content, but it's also a tool for mastering the essays. The Persia GT, the politics, economics, religion, society, ideology, art, geography, technology, that's what it stands for. It is a way for you to analyze a question for the essays, and it's a way to organize content so that you can make sure to understand everything that's in the unit. So there are 9 units for the history courses. Each one of them has subheadings. I call them the blue headings according to the course and exam description. And then we apply the Persia GT to each of the blue subheadings. And then usually there's a very solid coverage for a good solid baseline for students just by covering Persia GT for the blue subheadings. And it's very effective at covering content. And it's very effective at figuring out a good thesis and argument for the essays as well.
Will there be homework?
Always. Yep. There's always homework. For the history courses, the homework is research and reading, whether it's a textbook or online research according to the Persia GT. And so students work together with the other students in the class, and they make a timeline that can serve as a study guide in the future. And it's also the first baseline. So usually about an hour of work between classes every day is usually enough, I find.
So you will set up a Google Classroom for the classes?
Yeah, there'll be a shared document, and everybody will work together to create one big timeline, which, like, if everybody was making their own timeline, then it would be more than an hour of work. But since everybody kind of teams up and divides up the Persia GT, you get one big, thorough document with information that everybody can use. Everybody's still doing all of the content. They're just kind of working on different aspects of the content, and so they combine their forces, and it often turns out looking quite good. If the students don't do their homework, sometimes it doesn't quite work out as well. But most of the time, vast majority of the time, in fact, students are collaborating and working well and making a great study document.
So will you be providing all the necessary materials to the students?
Yes. Most students will know what their textbook is going to be, but I also have textbooks of my own that I can give for the study. And then there's also online resources that students can use for primary sources and overviews and things like that. And then after they do their timeline creation, then we have a discussion in class. We cover comprehension questions, things that students don't understand. We go into broad concepts. I've got, a pretty time-tested set of lectures that I give on these concepts so that we can cover a broad overview. Like we don't get as into the specifics in the summer course as we do in the yearly courses, but that's time constraints. But we do cover everything, and we cover it in such a way that students come away with a firm foundation to build off of content for the to build off of content for the school year.
嗯。我来总结一下，刚才 Neal 老师就谈到了高中的 AP 历史课程，比较好一点的学校，尤其是常青藤，希望学生高中期间学3到4年的历史，通常是1年的世界史，1年的美国史，1年的美国政府加经济。有的学校呢，同时还开设 AP 人文地理、AP 艺术史。如果学校没有开设的话呢，有的同学也和 Neil 老师自学 AP 人文地理，9年级参加 College Board 的考试。有的同学也和 Neil 老师自学 AP 艺术史。这样的优势呢，是如果你考试成绩好，可以填在大学申请表；如果是自学的话，考试成绩不好，不用填写在大学申请表。然后呢，大学理事会有一个特定的奖项，如果学生考了多少门的 AP 课程，有不同等级的奖项，可以填在大学申请表。如果是学生，比如说 Lynbrook 的学生10年级学校没有 AP 世界史，但是我们平常经常辅导 Lynbrook 的学生，他们私下学 AP 世界史，然后参加5月份 College Board 的考试。大家看一下对 AP 历史方面还有没有什么问题？接下来呢，我们会讲一下作文竞赛。暑假的 AP 美国史和 AP 世界史预备课程呢，每节课下都有作业，有的是阅读啊、写作呀，还有一些 research，我们提供所有课程需要的材料。AP 历史呢，不论是世界、欧洲还是美国，大学理事会5月份考试的 format 都是一样，包含两大部分。第一部分是多项选择，第二大部分是3类作文，有作文简答，有历史图表、历史文件分析，然后第3类作文呢是长作文。所以仅仅有记忆是不够的，需要通过 proprietary 八大时间轴理解历史事件的因果关系和关联性，同时掌握3类作文的撰写方式。接下来呢，我们就来谈论一下作文竞赛。近期辅导的比较多的作文竞赛是 John Locke。这个作文竞赛投交的截止日期是6月30号，但是学生需要提前注册才能投交作品。注册的截止日期是5月底。So Neil, can you talk about the process of your coaching for John Locke Essay Contest?
Yeah, we some students come in with work already done, or they're kind of got started but not sure how to continue, and so we pick up from where they're at. And some students come in with nothing done, and no matter what, it's going to be okay. If students come in cold, then we'll start with the prompts. We'll start with the topics. We'll brainstorm. We'll figure out whatever, depending on the essay contest, we'll look at what the prompts are or what the requirements are. I'll make sure the students understand what needs to be done. And then we'll brainstorm topics, we'll brainstorm theses, and then we'll start the preliminary research process to fill in the blanks. I try to make sure that students are always doing something that they're engaged with. I don't like to just say, like, okay, do this. Like, it's always based on what students' performance and interests and skills are. And then we develop the thesis or the basic understanding, and then preliminary round of research lets us make an outline structure for the essay, and then from that they'll write a kind of a rough draft, and then we'll do a second round of research to support the points that are being made in the essay, and then we'll do drafts until it's finished. And it tends to work pretty well. I've had a lot of students who didn't ever really write a paper in a serious research based way before who come out of it feeling much stronger, more confident in their work, and most of the time, the majority of the time, if the students do the work, in fact, all the time, if the students do the work, they end up with a good competitive paper. And there's no guarantees because these are such competitive essay contests as far as performance is concerned. But I've had some students with great success, particularly in Scholastic. There's been a lot of success for Scholastic. John Locke is really competitive, and then of course, like something like Concord Review is insanely competitive, but still had a lot of success. I've seen some wonderful papers come out of this process when the students follow it from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Something for the New York Times that could be really good for helping develop student writing as well, that just in general. And I occasionally students will poke through and get something submitted.
Yeah, yeah. A student do need to put in significant amount of time after each class.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's going to be an hour to 2 hours minimum for work. Like we don't write it in class. If you don't do your homework, then we're going to be sitting there watching you type on the screen, and it happens. But I don't write it for you. I say, well, what do you mean by this? And what do you think should come next? We do argumentation. You are the supplier of the argumentation. You are the supplier of the research and the materials. I will help with research. Like if you get stuck, I will help you do some research, but the bulk of the research has got to come from you. The bulk of the writing has got to come from you. But at the end of the day, it turns out pretty good. I had a lot of success with it. I'm really happy with how students have been responding to the essay contests in recent years. I've had success in the past, continuing to have success in the future. You just got to do the work when you come in, and it turns out well.
补充说明一下，张 Lock 呢是初中生和高中生都可以参加。初中生和高中生的写作的命题是不一样的。高中生呢是有7大领域，每个领域有3个命题，所以一共有21个命题。今年呢，我们仍然是1对1辅导，因为如果是小组课的话，学生必须是选择同一个命题。所以我们仍然是1对1辅导，我们觉着这样是更有效的。
These are some of my favorite conversations that I ever have with students, actually. Like, I love all the conversations in classes that I have, but the essay contest, it seems a little intimidating, and a lot of students aren't sure if they can do it. But it's really fun to get to actually try to like talk in depth about a concept and unpack it and help the students go from like I have no idea what I'm doing to like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. And actually the process of research is more fun than I thought. Like it's one of the most edifying and developing things that a student can do is to go through the process of writing one of these essays. um i I really, it's one of my favorite things to teach, to be honest.
Right, right. So as for John Locke, if you are thinking about participating this year, make sure you register at the official website before May 30th.
Yeah, but if you're going to do John Locke, you better get started now. It's not too late, but it is almost too late. So it got to be right now. You don't want to be trying to if you're doing it in the last 2 weeks, you're going to be turning in something mediocre. If you start now, you can still do something good, but it definitely got to start now, and definitely got to sign up on the website this week.
我们刚才谈论了一下 John Locke 作文竞赛分为初中组和高中组，另外一个大家很经常参加的作文竞赛是 Scholastic 作文竞赛，截止日期是12月初，每个邮编的截止日期稍微不一样。Scholastic 呢有很多不同的文体，不论是短篇小说呀、flash fiction 呐，或者是新闻呐、幽默呀、科幻呐、议论文呐等等。如果学生对 Scholastic 感兴趣的话，我们也建议暑假开始。Scholastic 允许学生投交多篇作品。除了这2个大家都非常熟悉的作文竞赛，当然还有很多其他的作文竞赛。 我们也在辅导，有的难度稍微低一点，比如说 Ocean Awareness，有的难度极高，比如说 The Concord Review。大家看一下对作文竞赛还有没有什么问题？接下来我们就要讨论一下SAT。So Neil, for this summer, we offer two SAT group sessions. One is SAT Prep 8 classes plus 2 mock tests. The other is SAT Prep 12 classes plus 3 mock tests. Could you tell the parents or the students which class is the best fit for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an important distinction to make because, and I've seen it happen multiple times. If a student has already done a number of practice tests, then and they're already getting over a 600, 650, if they're trying to break through a boundary grade, then they should take the 8 classes. Because if they take the 12 classes, they're going to want to go to the 8 classes because the 12 classes one is intended for students who are starting from ground level and haven't done practice tests. They're starting cold. The 8 classes is for students who have already taken a bunch of tests. And what often happens is that parents will look at that and they'll say, oh, this number is bigger, therefore it's going to be better. Which is not necessarily the case. When it comes to SAT prep, quality is always better than quantity, no matter what. And the point of having more tests for the 12 classes is because these are students who haven't had as much experience with it. So their first couple of tests are going to be not as good as they get their sea legs. For the fewer tests, that is for students who already have their sea legs, who already understand how the test works and are trying to break through a boundary. So if a student is trying to break through a boundary, they're going to go through 2 or 3 tests with a lot of other students who have never done it before, and they're not working on breaking through a boundary, they're working on learning the test. So 8 classes, breaking a score barrier. 12 classes, starting from scratch. That's really the best way to do it. I promise it's the best way to do it. There is diminishing returns for grinding, and the 8 classes is for grinding. The 12 classes is for learning, if that makes sense.
Will there be homework?
Every day, between every class, there will be a reading section or a writing section. It's usually about an hour of work between each class.
大家看一下有没有什么问题，我再回答一下比较常见的问题。第一个是 PSAT，PSAT 学生需要考吗？我认为学生需要考。第一个是可以作为 SAT 的 preview，第二个呢，如果学生11年级的 PSAT 成绩比较好的话，有一个全国的奖项。这个奖项呢，可以填在大学申请表。Neil 老师当年就是这个 NMSQT 的得主。So Neil, you were the winner for the 11th grade PSAT, NMSQT.
I was a finalist. I was a National Merit Scholarship finalist. I didn't get the actual, but I got as close to the end as you could, and I still managed to get a full ride scholarship to my university because of that. That my home state, my state school had to, if you went there and you were a merits finalist, they paid for your tuition. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was how I paid my tuition.
yeah. I think it's a good idea for students to start taking PSAT probably in ninth grade.
Yeah, there is a lot of value. Like a lot of people don't like it, and I mean SAT's got its problems for sure, but there is a lot of value to be had in studying to take a standardized test and doing the vocabulary and learning to analyze the passages and just the rigor of attempting a test. Like I'm a pretty open educator. Like I'm not a big standardized test guy in terms of assessing someone's skills and intelligence, but the process of studying for it is similar to the process for training for a marathon or trying to achieve some sort of physical goal. It's setting a mental goal for yourself, and the application of time and effort on it is very valuable. Um, it's valuable in different ways. It's not the ultimate measurement of everything about a student's skill and intelligence, but it is a useful process and it is a useful measurement. So I think the sooner and the better that students can do on these, the more benefit they can get. And if you know me from classes and if you know me from these things, you might think, oh, Neal doesn't like standardized tests, but I kind of do. It's kind of like doing chess or a crossword puzzle. It's something that can train your mind in useful ways.
When should students start preparing for SAT or ACT?
I like for the actual test taking, I would say like eighth grade to freshman year. For the reading skills and the reading comprehension, I mean, that can start in elementary school. Like students should be reading purposefully and attentively as early as possible. And if students struggle with that, which is relatively common, especially in this day and age, because people's attention spans are weakening, mine is, everybody's are because of technology changes, then you got to start as soon as possible, and you got to start picking up a book and you got to start reading. So in terms of reading comprehension, as early as possible. In terms of the actual test mechanics, I would say not earlier than eighth grade necessarily, but like not later than freshman year for studying, and then take the PSAT like freshman year or sophomore year. And if you're ahead enough, take the SAT sophomore year.
Now we're going to talk about AP Lan。高中的英语课程有两门 AP 课程，一门是 AP 英语，一门是 AP 文学。暑假的时候，我们有 AP 英语的预备课程。So Neil, can you talk about what will the AP Land Preview class cover in the summer?
We are going to focus on mastery of the essays. We will do some multiple choice, and a lot of students get kind of fixated on the multiple choice for the Lang, I've found, but it is not the most important part. And the multiple choice is very similar to the SAT in a lot of ways on the Lang. So I kind of de-emphasize that. Make sure that students are familiar with it and know what to expect, but it is not worth obsessing about the multiple choice on the Lang. The most important thing is understanding what the structure and point requirements are for the essays. And it's basically, my metaphor is like learning how to dig three kinds of ditches of different length and depth, because it's very much about hit these points, you do these theses, use this kind of evidence, use this kind of structure. And by the end of our course, students will know exactly what they need to do for the three essays on the test. And it's extremely useful to have that perspective, because I find that a lot of high school courses will add a lot of additional material that's not necessarily relevant for the test. So it's relevant for your coursework in school because that's what your teacher needs you to do, but it's not necessarily relevant to getting a 5 on Lang. So we focus exactly specifically on the skills you need to get a 5 on the test in May.
Yeah, I also want to add that students usually take AP Land before AP Literature.
Absolutely. I cannot stress enough how much of a good idea that is. The lit, do not underestimate lit. It is not the same thing.
Yeah, so most of the school students take AP Land in 11th grade, although some of the schools students take AP Land in 10th grade.
Yeah, I think students should take it in 10th grade. It's extremely useful. It's not as challenging as it might appear, because it really is just basically an SAT writing section plus 3 essays. And knowing how to write those 3 kinds of essays is really useful for academics for both the rest of high school and for college. So like a comp class, I wish I had taken a comp class in high school. It would have been very, very helpful for writing essays when I got to college. I had to figure it all out when I got to college. So yeah, like take Lang as early as possible. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, even some of the high schools, AP Land and AP Lit are required courses.
Wow. Yeah. Requiring lit is a big swing from a
Yeah,
curriculum. If you trust your English teacher, then yeah, that makes sense. Like if you got a good English department, then that makes sense. But if you're pulling in a bunch of teachers in their first couple of years of English teaching, I don't know if I would make lit a requirement. There's a learning curve even for teaching lit.
yeah. So lastly, we're going to talk about grade 7 to 9 analytical reading and academic writing class this summer. Do you know how many books we'll cover in this class? Neil, this is a group class.
I really like to adjust what we do based on the students. So if I get a group of students who's got a really, vibrant interaction, then I'll take a swing at something a little more challenging and we'll take a little bit longer, maybe. Like I like to do, if we're doing daily classes, I like to do a book a week, right? To pick something in the middle of difficulty, we can do some analysis. But if students are really engaged and they're really involved in it, then I'll take 2 weeks or we'll split it up. It depends on what student interests are and student engagement. So if students come ready to work, we'll pick some difficult works and we'll really break them down. And it also depends on what students have already read, and it depends on where student interests lie, but the curriculum is always adjusted for shared interest and shared background. So nobody's ever reading anything they've already read. Um, so that it's flexible for student need. But usually a book a week is our target. Yeah,
Is it fair to say that you choose the books based on students' interest and their current level?
absolutely. Yeah, that's the entire point is uh finding where the students are as a group, finding what their interests are and finding what their needs are. So it's not about making it easy for them, but it's about finding that what's going to challenge them and help them develop and work together. There's nothing worse than having to read a book that you have zero interest in. I know that happens a lot in school because you have a set curriculum. And I just remember like dreading certain books because I didn't want to read them and then really looking forward to other books. And so this class will just be all books that you're looking forward to. That's the idea. I got tons of classics, so I'm pretty good at picking classics that will work for everybody. I can pick and choose. Sometimes I get a group of kids that are all excited about doing some Shakespeare, and then I'll have other times where I got a bunch of kids who absolutely dread the concept of touching Shakespeare. So that's I love to do Shakespeare when I got the chance, but if students are like, they react with a bunch of bad emojis when I mention doing Shakespeare, that we're not gonna do Shakespeare. But there's tons of classics, and there's a lot of things that are classic but are not necessarily considered classic. So I've got a wide swath to choose from. So it'll always be challenging and literarily significant. Everything we read is a classic.
嗯哼。好，今天我们的会议涵盖了很多的内容，从 AP 世界史、AP 美国史、AP 人文地理，到 AP 英语，然后也提及到 SAT 暑假的备考课程和针对7到9年级的分析阅读学术写作课程。大家如果有什么问题，欢迎提出，也欢迎在会后添加我的微信。